This month and last month, we have been talking about... Oh, goodness gracious. Well, this is being recorded, so let's try that again. This month and last month, we are talking about... That's much better. Yes, spiritual mind treatment, which is a type of positively framed meditation that has a lot in common with prayer, but also has some significant differences. And so each week, we're going a little further with the topic by adding more information to the topic from the week before. So if you've missed a couple of Sundays, or if you're just joining us for the very first time, you can catch up by reviewing our online resources. It's all free. We've got video, we've got audio of all of the previous messages, so you can have the whole course at your fingertips on our website at www.cslsr.org. Now, spiritual mind treatment is our form of prayer here at the Center for Spiritual Living. It's one of the 5 pillars of our tradition. And I prefer to refer to it as a form of positively framed meditation, so I can separate it in my thinking from the general ideas about prayer in our culture. Because as we've been learning, it's quite different from conventional prayer. It's more like a meditation. It's more like contemplation. Sometimes we call it, for short, we call it affirmative prayer. We're talking about spiritual mind treatment. What I like about it is that anybody can learn it because it has a system. You can learn the steps, and it can be adapted for use by any person regardless of what faith tradition they come from. It's quite flexible in that way. Now, last week I ended by saying that today I would explain to you exactly what our founder, Ernest Holmes, said when he said that spiritual mind treatment, this form of prayer, is not well-wishing. It's not hoping. It's not that thing we so often hear, sending thoughts and prayers. It's not that. So let's get right into it with a quote from a very well-known teacher from our tradition, Eric Butterworth, who said, "Prayer is the most misunderstood subject in the field of religious practice." Not by us, of course, by other people. Why? Well, because it is looked upon as an attempt to coax a miracle from a reluctant God. It's often a last resort. He goes on to say, and there is this tendency to try to see God through our troubles, through the filter of our troubles. Well, we've been talking about that. In past weeks, we've said, try not to think of God as the great vending machine in the sky. Try not to take all the energy of your trouble into the prayer, the spiritual mind treatment, the meditation. Try to leave it behind. And we said, try not to think of your prayer as the time when you are influencing God. I mean, if you're going to be influencing anything, try to influence your own thinking. So you can see how important it is in this way to get a clear, honest, authentic idea for yourself about what God is to you. Because if you don't start with that, if you don't get that clear, the rest of it's not going to make any sense at all. You got to start there. And that's exactly what Eric Butterworth advises us to do. He says that we are to begin with the idea that God is the whole, no matter what we see in the part. Now, when he says in the part, he means here in this world of appearances. No matter what we see, we begin with the idea that God is whole, the wholeness of creation. And when we do that, thus, though experiences change for better or worse, we know that there is that which changes not. The one presence, the one power of God. So there we have it. We are to think of our spiritual mind treatment or our prayer as the time we spend to expand our view so that we can take in more of the whole, so that we can see more of the truth of God, let's say. Or we can say it this way, so that we can judge less by outer appearances, so that over time we can become more and more confident, more and more convinced of the presence of the divine as a real felt experience all around us and in us and through us, no matter what is going on. Now, Butterworth suggests that instead of using our prayer time to ask for miracles, that we use our time in prayerful meditation to grow in our understanding of what God is. And that when we do that, the results seem miraculous anyway. Now he says we are to begin with this awareness and see our troubles from this consciousness. Begin with the awareness of wholeness and use that as the filter to see through. And then he says, this is a kind of prayer that never fails. Because you're not looking for miracles, only for perception to change. The goal then, he says, is not to set things right, but to see them rightly. Well, there we have it. The goal of spiritual mind treatment then is to see things, we might say, as they really are through the light of spiritual truth. Not see things through outer appearances, not outer judgment, because that can be really messed up. Right? See it through the light of spiritual truth. That's like I'm looking at life looking for the yes in this. The theoretical physicist Max Planck said that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. There you have it. We needed a physicist to tell us how to do spiritual mind treatment. So that the goal of spiritual mind treatment is to change the way I look at things. So I'm not wishing things were different. I'm not hoping things will get better. Oh, they may. What I'm doing instead is I'm meditating on the spiritual truth of being, of things, of life. So in other words, I'm shifting my awareness from how things are in the outer world and I'm moving it to place it squarely on the spiritual truth. Now, if you want to know more about this method, you've got resources available to you. You can go back on our videos or audio, in particular, the week where we talked about affirmations and denials. That will explain it all to you. Or you can come on Wednesday evenings throughout the whole month of October. I will be teaching a free 1-hour class at 7 p.m. Everyone is welcome. And we'll be using the very first book that Ernest Holmes wrote, Creative Mind, 1908. So we can explore that together. You're welcome to come. Now back to Eric Butterworth, because he also makes this wonderful recommendation. He's quite feisty about it. He says that we ought to approach spiritual mind treatment in the same way that we approach electricity, with respect for its power. Oh, there's something in that idea that's well worth considering. To be tongue-in-cheek about it, when you and I are about to use electricity, we don't have to tell electricity what it is or how great it is. Oh, electricity, you are so great. I know, I'm poking fun at myself with this, in a Monty Python sort of way, And when you and I are about to use electricity, we don't have to make any promises to it or any bargains for it to work. Electricity is going to flow through your chosen use of it according to its own laws, the laws that govern it. Now, that is useful because don't you know that is what ultimate unconditional love is like. Ultimate love equals ultimate freedom. So ultimate love doesn't judge you or me. I mean, it doesn't care what religion you are. It doesn't even care if you believe in it. It gives ultimate freedom to you and me to be exactly who we are, whether or not we use its power wisely. Even if we use its power in a silly, selfish way, it still flows. And we can be certain, though, that electricity will not change its nature because I used it unwisely. See, the law of electricity is the law of electricity, and anyone may use it, and all who do use it must bow before the law of electricity. It stays the same. You know what I'm talking about, right? It cannot and doesn't change its nature. That's why it is said that it is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. This is important. We might consider that when we're doing our spiritual mind treatment or prayer. When I'm about to do my spiritual mind treatment, I might remember I don't need to remind the Almighty what it's supposed to be doing or what it is. I do not need to inform the all-knowing mind of creation how it should manage the universe. Rather, spiritual mind treatment is the time for me to remember what the divine is in my life. So I might call spiritual mind treatment a time of right remembering. Or think of gravity. It's helpful to think of that too. I might want to consider this amazing yet mysterious power and my relationship to it because apparently I'm using it all the time, even when I'm not thinking about it. And when I stand too close to the edge of this stage, no amount of pleading for an exception to the rules is going to stop me from going down. Right? I'm subject to the same rules of gravity that everyone and everything is. So it's better for me to sync my activity with the law of gravity. It's better for me to harmonize my thinking with the way the law of gravity works. It's going to be better. It's not personal. And somebody might say then, but where does God come into all of this talk of electricity and gravity? Where does God come into it? Oh, and Eric Butterworth answers that in a very controversial way. He says, God does not come in because God never went out. God is not only in all, God is all. So prayer is not a means of reaching God. I mean, how can you reach that which is everywhere? Like it says in Acts, in Him we live and move and breathe and think and love and create and have our being. Where else do you think you are? So, back to electricity and gravity. Electricity does not stop being electricity just because my mind is not on it. Now, I've got to think about that. The divine does not stop being the great allness, the great underpinning wholeness of all creation, not under any circumstances. Well, I've got to think about that. And that's what spiritual mind treatment is about. You see, it's better for me to sync with the nature of the divine. It's better for me to harmonize my thinking with the way of divinity. It's going to work out better. So let's practice again like we did last week. Think of a situation in your life that is troubling you, that could benefit from the light of prayer. We call that the problem. And now imagine, using your beautiful imagination that we've all been given, that it is a little time in the very close future and the situation has miraculously been resolved. And see yourself in your mind's eye as the person living in that solution. And ask yourself, what am I feeling in that imagined scenario? How am I showing up? We call that the purpose of your spiritual mind treatment. And once you've got clear on what the purpose is, and at home you might take a lot more time to do this, then we can begin the practice of spiritual mind treatment, which starts with sitting down. You've already accomplished that. Then letting everything go, including the problem, and relaxing as much as possible. You might take your time at home to do that, and then at an appropriate time, fill your mind with thoughts about the divine. You're remembering the divine. To the best of your ability, you are remembering that which cannot be defined. So it's like you're having a conversation with yourself. You might even say such things as, God is the love of all creation. And you might find yourself commenting on your own statement. You just spend time with yourself and your thought, thinking not about the problem, but about the allness and the wholeness of divinity. That's your only task. And when that feels authentic, you can move on to the next part where you start to think about your connection to it. It's a feeling of unity, of belonging, of kinship, of being at home. And you might talk to yourself about it. You might even say, the love that God is expresses itself through my heart as my love. And you might find that even as you say something in your mind, you're editing it at the same time. It's very natural and flows freely. And then after a while, you'll be ready to move on to the next part, where you'll remember that imagined scene, your purpose, of you living the solution. And you will bring it into your awareness, that solution, as if seeing how God sees you in your wholeness, in your solution. And it may even be wordless. It may just be in mind images and feeling. If you really get into it, you're going to start to feel something move in you, a gladness, a rejoicing. And there will come a time when you'll know you're complete now, and you want to get to that place, the completion. It's the final step, the feeling of letting it be. You know, you want to put it down, you want to get going, you want to move on. And I want to talk about that step today, completion. Oh, it's very important in spiritual mind treatment to get to the place of release. You know, you want to put the practice down, so that you're not left hanging on, which can be a challenge, because sometimes we are hanging on. You know, my mind may say to me, But what if nothing changes out there? And then I have to remember we are concerned with inner change, not arranging the universe outside. And my mind still goes on, but what if not? What if it doesn't change? Have you ever been in that place where nothing's happening? You've done all the spiritual mind treatment you know how to do. Is anybody? And stuck like a spiritual desert? Nobody? One person? Yeah. Oh, I've been there. And there's this comforting piece written by Helene Cherovino. She wrote a book, How to Pray. It's not even in print anymore, but I keep this part. I read it almost like a meditation to myself in those times where it's not moving and I don't know why. She says, don't let your spiritual lows scare you. They are worth every effort it takes to move through them, because as you advance in your prayer life, you will be developing a more mature relationship with God. And along with this growth might come some growing pains. During tough times, remind yourself that unanswered prayers and spiritual dry spells are opportunities, not death sentences. They have the power to deepen your understanding of prayer. Such hurdles strengthen your prayer muscle, teaching you to look beyond simple yes answers and feel-good prayers into a more profound spiritual life. After dealing with the heavy issues of unanswered prayers and the spiritual desert, it becomes obvious that a relationship with God is not just about asking and receiving. It is about recognizing that God is in everything, in the joy and in the sorrow. Now, I don't know what works for other people's movement when they get stuck. I know what I have to do. I have to ask myself questions. Here's a sample of the questions I ask myself when things are stuck. I ask, can I accept that my human perspective may be limited? Because sometimes what looks stuck on the outside may be moving on the inside. If I think about all of those treatments, all of those spiritual mind treatments, and there were many, all of those spiritual mind treatments I did for a partner. And there were a lot of treatments, that is. Like 20 years worth. There were times in that. Can you see yourself getting despondent? Thinking, it's never going to happen. So it's important. Can I accept that my human perspective may be limited and what looks stuck may be moving on the unseen side of life? And my timing may not be divine timing, so shut up. I have to talk to myself like that sometimes. Can I consider that other alternatives exist for my desired outcome? Because sometimes I can get really focused, obsessively focused on how things should be. The universe, according to Edward. Very tight. And have I considered a sub-question of this? Have I considered that the way things are is part of the wholeness unfolding? Can I accept, That during this time of seeming no progress, that I'm being marinated. And that deep growth is taking place in me and around me. I mean, I get that this time of the year, when fall is starting to present itself and there's that beautiful feeling and some plants are starting to recede. And I remind myself, they're not dying. That's what I say to myself. Spring is coming. Spring is always on the way. Can I remember that? And finally, I have to ask myself this. Can I be willing to accept help from others? And if you are, there are resources available to you. You can go online. We have an online spiritual mind treatment prayer request form. Or you could, after service, go to the chapel and one of our trained prayer practitioners will do a spiritual mind treatment for you. Or you could call our telephone ministry and have someone do a spiritual mind treatment with you. Or if it's something that you would prefer to have in-person one-on-one coaching for, you can go online and hire the services of one of our trained spiritual coaches. All the information is on our website. There are resources for you when you feel stuck and cannot do it alone. Now, in summary, spiritual mind treatment is a positively framed meditation that leads to a deep and authentic, real relationship with the divine. And it is through that relationship that we begin to expand our view of reality so that we are looking at our life through the filter of wholeness. And that allows us to see things we didn't see before when we were looking through the filter of division and separateness. Now, next week, we're going to wrap up this whole series with the topic, Let Loose Your Consciousness. And the reason for that is our founder says that in addition to practicing spiritual mind treatment, we must practice being more and more open to what divinity is trying to do through us. And to do that, we've got to let our consciousness run free and wild and imagine the unimaginable and practice opening the aperture of our acceptance more and more every day. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. For now, I invite you to breathe in and to exhale, letting your eyes close. As we enjoy a moment of quietness today for our practice, we'll let silence be our teacher.